JD Vance, we're still seeing the sort of like the impact of the vice presidential debate. For the most part, I think everybody's completely forgotten about it. I mean, this was almost, it was 2 weeks ago to the day.
Totally.
And it seems like it was about 6 years ago. However, JD Vance is still being dogged by, I mean, say what you will about the debate. He's still being dogged by this question. And in that sense, I don't know how you measure this, but in that sense, it was a victory for Tim Walz. And I will also add that when you tie into what seems to be the Harris strategy of making this election about approaching disaffected Republicans, not a strategy that I agree with, and I'm not convinced that it's going to be a winning one, but I don't know how we measure that at this point. But with that said, this question that keeps dogging JD Vance,
it's a problem for them.
Dovetails nicely with that strategy.
Yep.
Here is JD Vance being interviewed by Lulu Garcia Navarro, I guess, who is at the New York Times. I'm not familiar with her work. They videotaped this, and here's JD Vance answering a relatively easy question with another question.
In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator, yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's the
Vance,
question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American.
All right, pause it for 1 second, then we'll go back a little bit. But first off, I'm sure everybody remembers reading that JD Vance Oppo research packet that was apparently hacked, and because you could access it on Twitter via Ken Klippenstein. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've got that backwards. You could not access that on Twitter because Ken Klippenstein was banned from Twitter because he put a link
He's
to
back
it.
now.
He was election hacked briefly, though.
But if Trump wins this election, I'm going to be going nuts about how the suspension of Ken Klippenstein was election interference by Elon Musk and JD Vance.
We should put out a research that suggests Kamala Harris would have had gotten a lot more votes if people could see the pics of Ken Klippenstein sitting at his desk, realizing that he was banned from Twitter.
It's a suppression of vital information.
What do you think it is about the dick pics of Hunter Biden that would have swayed millions of votes?
No, this is what the Silicon Valley...
Is it like this thing? Like, he's got one of these problems?
Yeah.
Silicon Valley sort of like right-wingers they feel too smart to say illegals are cramming the ballot box, but they need another way to get in with those people, because that's the base, to say the election was stolen. And this is the fancy or boutique way of saying the election was stolen.
Of course. And I love the idea of, like, you answer my question, then I'll answer your question. Go back a little bit. This is one of the most petulant things. And this is like the 5th time he's been asked this.
Yep.
You'd think he could come up with an answer.
He can't, though.
Because he's terrified of Trump being
100%.
like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying, which is that when our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government in a way that independent studies suggest affect the votes, I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something.
Pause it for a second. Have you ever seen that like bumper sticker that says every court case went this way?
Kamala Harris
Dot, dot, dot.
2024. Every court case went this way. Haven't you heard
Stop
that?
talking about court cases. You're sloganeering.
It's ridiculous. She's just describing the set of facts. Oh, come on. Stop repeating a slogan to me.
54-40 or fight, and we have struck out entirely through the legal system.
Another slogan.
Like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discrete, a problem of censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020, and more importantly, that led to Kamala Harris's governance, which has screwed this country up in a big way.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies,
The answer is no.
when you have technology companies censoring Americans at a mass scale in a way that, again, independent studies have suggested affect the vote, I think that it's right to protest against that, to criticize that, and that's a totally reasonable thing.
So the answer is no. And
So this plays right into what she's trying to convey, but the fact that Pence, I mean, this is what we hate about the Liz Cheney thing coming out there, but this is what they're trying to articulate to those independents who over 60% think Trump lost the election fair and square in 2020. That basically now there's no guardrails in between him becoming like a dictator, because JD Vance is not going to be Mike Pence in that situation where, like, I mean, look, who knows if that's true, but I do think the threat is legitimate, and it, like, the democracy angle, I think, plays with a lot of independents.
I think that's true from an electoral standpoint. What I would like to see is a reporter at that point say, well, if you believe that private companies do not have the right to moderate their platforms, and it is, then I'd be curious as if you think it's also, I mean, because, I don't know how you would enforce this, right? I mean, it would have to be via governmental edict that Hunter Biden's dick pics should be released on Twitter, as should J.D. Vance's Oppo research. But if he's okay with that, where does he stand on the question of limiting campaign contributions by these same corporations that presumably either they do or do not have the right, like if it's freedom of expression,
Right.
or they're willing to curb the freedom of expression by enforcing an edict, a government edict, as to what they have to say. I mean, there's two sides to the First Amendment, right? No forced speech, no censorship of speech. If they're going to force speech, in other words, you got to link through to J.D. Vance's Oppo research and Hunter Biden's dick pics, then, and he's willing to sort of force that, is he also willing to curb their ability to spend money in the context of campaigns for all his tech bro buddies? And of course he's not. He's not going to in any way inhibit that. But the funny part about this as well is the argument, this has already been settled by the Supreme Court when they said this type of moderation that J.D. Vance is talking about, where the government forces them to not decide that they're going to moderate in any way these comments, is a free speech question. That has come back to haunt the Supreme Court, or may, in the series of TikTok cases that we've just recently had, which basically where a circuit court judge has said, well, if they have freedom of speech in that the government cannot dictate to them how their algorithm presents or how they moderate comments, then they're not just a platform; they're actually publishers.
Right.
So we're headed for a bunch of different disparate principles that are basically careening toward each other. It would be nice to see a reporter, knowing that J.D. Vance is always going to lean on this, begin to question him. Okay, well, let's carry through on this. If you think the government can force these big tech companies, and I have no problem with this on some level, can force them to change their algorithm or to change the terms of their services, what else can the government do in terms of regulating corporations' speech? I'm all in favor of it. I'd love to see what J.D. Vance says about that.
Well, he's also, that argument that he's making, just to be clear, Trump was not making that in 2020. He had a fake elector scheme. He was talking about wide-scale fraud.
They're bussing him in.
They're bussing illegal immigrants in to vote for Biden.
And he's still saying all that stuff.
But J.D. Vance has to be cleanup crew and go out there and be swarmy lawyer and not refuse to answer the question. But I think the more people see of this, it's a liability for them. It truly is. No one listens to that, and not even a diehard. I mean, maybe that's not true. They're in a cult, but most people watching that go, this guy is lying to your face. Yes.
And I would have loved to seen the reporter after she has made it clear that he's not going to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, then go into, can you explain to us just exactly what it is about Hunter Biden's penises, penis pictures,
multiple,
that would have garnered Donald Trump millions of votes?
I mean, it must have been that devastating. You just got to question his dad.
I feel like we should put Don Jr. and Hunter Biden in a room with a cookie and then just sort of decide then what the results are going to be.
I'm taking Hunter.
In a way, it's sort of election interference that everybody isn't subscribed to Ken Klippenstein's Substack.
Many people are saying that.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.